Walter's idea of news is unfortunately becoming old-fashioned now, which is that it has to be checked before you can do it. There's a huge responsibility. It's a funny thing, as we have these new delivery systems, bloggers and all of those things. What's happening is speed, and speed kills in news. There's always this horrible balance between getting it out first and getting it out right. And Walter understood that. And you'll find in the film what a great, troubling time this was. For a full 5 minutes, the television newsroom agonized over whether to say the president was dead.
Walter says it's not strong enough. We can't just go on Dan Rather's confirmation.
I say we call the White House.
Eddie, are they going to announce this in Washington or Dallas?
Dallas, I think.
Pierpoint says that Kilduff is probably going to call a press conference.
Or Salinger?
He's on his way to Tokyo, somewhere over the Pacific.
Walter wants us to wait.
It's crazy. We ran it on radio already. Why wouldn't we run it on TV?
We just have a report from our correspondent Dan Rather in Dallas that he has confirmed that President Kennedy is dead. There is still no official confirmation of this, however. It's a report from our correspondent, Dan Rather, in Dallas, Texas.
So Cronkite announced that Dan Rather had announced the death of the president. But it wasn't the same as an official White House statement. In times of crisis, the Kennedy assassination, September 11th, people go to the place they most trust the news. They'll go to the New York Times or the Washington Post, or they go to the networks for news. Because now they need it. It's important that it's not just accurate, but it's also important that it's put in perspective. And that's something that doesn't happen with speed. And Walter understood that.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash...
Of all the images of that weekend, and there were many, Walter Cronkite almost letting his emotions get the better of him is perhaps the one that has stayed in most people's minds.
Some 38 minutes ago.
There were stronger images to come, but that instant, when this all-American anchorman was so visibly touched by the awfulness of that official announcement, that was when television came of age. It's an important moment if you think about announcing the death of a president. That's a big thing. That has huge ramifications. You can't get those wrong, those moments. You can't get the big moments wrong. You got to get them right. And Walter understood that and was willing to risk not being first. He was first because he was great at it, but he was willing to risk not being first to not get it wrong. The slain president would lie in state, first at the White House, then at the Capitol. 1 million Americans would come to say goodbye. This story was moving so fast, newspapers couldn't keep up. He really did represent our version of the 20th century. He grew up a Midwestern kid. He grew to the heights that you could only dream of. He put his reputation on the line and we trusted him. He was the most trusted man in America. When he said about the Vietnam War, it's unwinnable, the President of the United States said, if I've lost Cronkite, I've lost the country. And chose not to run for re-election, which is unheard of. And he would have won. Had he not. Walter Cronkite and a few other people, you could probably point to Muhammad Ali, but Walter Cronkite is easily one of the most important reasons that the war ended. Literally, how many people can say that they had that kind of effect? You imagine the idea that during the Vietnam War protests, it was all young people. Young people were out saying this war is bad, but to the Midwest or to the middle-aged, you went to war. That was what you did, including to Walter. And the everyman thought, well, these are just young hippies who don't want to get drafted. And Walter went there, and he came back and he said, this is unwinnable. And from that moment on, the discussion about Vietnam changed from this is a bunch of hippies to this is a unwinnable war. What he brought to this country, how he led the space race, and how he championed it, and maybe even to a fault, you know, in terms of his passion for news, sort of his passion for space almost overriding his passion for news. But in a way, it represents him, because space is the idea. Our space race was this constant questioning of what is next and what's beyond us. And if you think about Walter, that's all he did his whole life. In his 90s, you'd sit around the table and he was still questioning things. He's still asking why. You know, how does it get to this? And I can't tell you what an honor it was to know that man. And all of you who got the chance to know him, we were very lucky.
This is the larger question that will be answered
For many, including reporters hardened by the experience of war, this was the saddest weekend of their lives. For those who thought Jack Kennedy was the future, it was the end of a dream.
Tonight there will be few Americans who will go to bed without carrying with them a sense that somehow they have failed. If in the search of our conscience we find a new dedication to the American concepts that brook no political, sectional, religious, or racial divisions, then maybe it may yet be possible to say that John Fitzgerald Kennedy did not die in vain. That's the way it is. Monday, November 25th, 1963.